They thought victory belonged to those with deep pockets, powerful connections, and eyes watching your every move. They bought influence, controlled the narrative, and surrounded you from every direction, convinced you had nowhere left to run. But they made one fatal mistake. They believed strength always looks loud. While they counted money, you counted lessons. While they chased control, you mastered patience. Every trap they built became another step toward your rise. They never imagined the quietest person in the room was rewriting the entire game. And when your final move arrived, everything they owned became completely useless against your unstoppable mind. They believed money could solve every problem, erase every obstacle, and guarantee every victory. To them, wealth was more than comfort. It was identity. They assumed that every person had a price, every opportunity could be purchased, and every challenge could be buried beneath enough influence. They surrounded themselves with symbols of success, convinced those symbols were proof of superiority. Expensive possessions became their armor, powerful friends became their shield, and constant attention became the fuel that convinced them they were untouchable. Looking at someone who walked a quieter path, they saw weakness instead of discipline. They mistook humility for surrender and patience for fear because they had never learned to recognize strength that doesn't need to announce itself. While they measured every situation in dollars and connections, you were collecting something they couldn't buy. Every disappointment taught you resilience. Every betrayal sharpened your judgment. Every setback forced you to become more resourceful than the day before. Life became your teacher. And unlike the lessons purchased in comfort, yours were earned through experience. Those lessons settled deep inside your character, shaping the way you thought, reacted, and adapted. You discovered that genuine confidence grows in silence, not applause. You learned that discipline survives when motivation disappears, and that patience often defeats speed when the goal is long-term success. People who rely entirely on power often become predictable. They believe intimidation always works because it has worked before. They expect fear to silence resistance. They assume pressure will force people to quit, but predictable thinking creates blind spots. When someone believes every problem has the same solution, they stop searching for better answers. They become trapped by their own success, repeating the same patterns until those patterns become weaknesses. They never realize that the world changes faster than pride can adapt. You understood something different. Every challenge demanded a new response. Every obstacle required observation before action. Instead of reacting emotionally, you learned to study situations carefully. While others rushed to prove themselves, you focused on understanding what truly mattered. That habit gave you an advantage few people noticed because real preparation rarely attracts attention. It happens behind closed doors, during lonely mornings, difficult nights, and quiet moments when nobody is watching. Those unseen hours became the foundation of everything you would eventually achieve. There is a difference between appearing powerful and becoming powerful. Appearance depends on what people think they see. Real strength depends on who you become when no one is looking. One can disappear overnight if circumstances change. The other grows stronger with every challenge. Those who build only appearances live in constant fear of losing them. They chase validation because they mistake attention for value. But those who build character discover that value cannot be taken away by criticism, rejection, or temporary failure. Character becomes portable wealth, following you into every room, every opportunity, and every battle. Many people underestimate quiet individuals because silence leaves room for assumptions. They imagine silence means uncertainty. They assume calmness means weakness. They mistake kindness for inability. Those assumptions become dangerous because they encourage careless decisions. When someone stops respecting another person's potential, they stop preparing for what that person might become. History is filled with examples of underestimated people who changed industries, communities, and entire generations simply because others judged appearances instead of capability. Meanwhile, every obstacle strengthened your emotional control. Instead of allowing frustration to consume you, you learned to transform it into determination. Instead of letting rejection define your future, you used it to clarify your direction. Instead of seeking revenge, you focused on growth. That choice separated your path from those who spent their energy trying to maintain control over others. They became distracted by protecting what they already possessed, while you became obsessed with developing what nobody could see yet. The greatest misunderstanding they made was believing external resources automatically create internal strength. Money can buy comfort, but not wisdom. Influence can open doors, but it cannot force respect. Connections can create opportunities, but they cannot replace competence. Reputation can attract attention, but it cannot guarantee endurance. These are valuable tools, yet tools remain useless without the mindset required to use them wisely. When circumstances become unpredictable, tools alone rarely save the person holding them. Character, adaptability, and clear thinking become far more valuable than possessions. As time passed, the difference between both paths became impossible to ignore. They remained dependent on conditions staying favorable. You became comfortable adapting when conditions changed. They needed control to feel secure. You learned to remain focused even in uncertainty. They relied on visible advantages. You relied on invisible discipline. That invisible discipline quietly multiplied every skill you developed, every relationship you earned, and every opportunity you recognized before others even noticed it existed. Eventually, reality revealed what appearances had hidden for years. The people who once seemed unstoppable struggled whenever circumstances refused to obey their expectations. Their confidence weakened because it had been built on external advantages instead of internal resilience. But your confidence remained steady because it had survived disappointment, isolation, criticism, uncertainty, and countless moments when success seemed impossible. What looked like an unfair disadvantage in the beginning had quietly become the greatest advantage of all. Most people believe silence is empty. They assume that if someone is not constantly speaking, defending themselves, or demanding attention, they have nothing meaningful to offer. In a world that rewards noise, quietness is often mistaken for weakness. But silence has a strange power that only a few ever learn to use. It creates mystery where others expect explanation. It builds patience where others react with emotion. It forces observers to make assumptions, and assumptions are often the beginning of costly mistakes. While everyone else was busy proving themselves, you were quietly studying the room, understanding people, and recognizing patterns that loud voices could never hear. Those who constantly announce every move also reveal every intention. They tell the world what they plan to do before they have done it. They seek validation before results exist. They become predictable because their actions always follow their words. Predictable people are easy to prepare for. Opponents know where to look, what to expect, and how to respond. But someone who moves in silence cannot be easily understood. Without unnecessary explanations, every decision becomes difficult to anticipate. Every step creates uncertainty, and uncertainty makes even confident people uncomfortable. There is a reason experienced strategists often value observation more than conversation. The person who speaks the least usually hears the most. Every conversation reveals hidden motivations. Every careless sentence exposes emotion. Every complaint uncovers insecurity. People often reveal themselves without realizing it because they assume everyone is too busy talking to truly listen. While they share their fears, ambitions, frustrations, and plans, you absorbed information. Piece by piece, you built an understanding that required no dramatic confrontation. Knowledge arrived naturally because patience invited it. Silence also protects energy. Arguments consume attention. Endless explanations drain confidence. Trying to convince people who have already decided not to understand becomes an exhausting cycle. Instead of wasting your strength defending yourself against every opinion, you chose to invest that energy into growth. Every hour spent improving your skills was worth more than hours spent winning meaningless debates. Every lesson learned quietly became another advantage no one could take away. Progress became your response instead of argument. Many people believe recognition should come before effort. They want applause during the process rather than after the achievement. But real transformation usually happens where nobody is watching. Muscles grow in private workouts. Knowledge grows during lonely hours of study. Character develops through unseen decisions repeated every day. Success often appears sudden only because observers never witnessed the years of invisible preparation. They celebrate the destination without understanding the journey that created it. Silence teaches emotional discipline. When someone insults you, the easiest reaction is immediate anger. When someone doubts your ability, the natural instinct is to defend yourself. But reacting to every criticism gives other people control over your emotions. The moment someone can predict your reactions, they gain influence over your behavior. Remaining calm does not mean accepting disrespect. It means refusing to let someone else's words dictate your actions. Emotional control is not passive. It is deliberate strength. It allows you to choose your response instead of becoming controlled by impulse. There is another advantage hidden inside silence. It encourages others to underestimate you. While that may feel unfair, it often becomes one of your greatest opportunities. Expectations shape preparation. If people believe you are harmless, they stop paying attention. If they assume you cannot compete, they relax their guard. Confidence turns into carelessness. Meanwhile, you continue preparing without interruption. By the time they recognize your true capability, the distance between where they expected you to be and where you actually stand has become impossible to close. Silence is not about avoiding action. It is about allowing actions to speak first. Promises create expectations, but results create belief. Anyone can claim they are disciplined, talented, or determined. Far fewer can quietly demonstrate those qualities through consistent effort over time. The world eventually notices patterns. It notices reliability, persistence, and excellence, even when they arrive without announcements. Reputation built through actions lasts longer than reputation built through words, because actions leave evidence where promises leave only memories. Quiet confidence also changes the way challenges are approached. Instead of reacting emotionally to obstacles, you begin asking better questions. What can this teach me? What weakness is being exposed? Which skill must I improve? These questions transform problems into opportunities for growth. Every setback becomes information instead of defeat. Every delay becomes preparation instead of punishment. This mindset gradually separates those who evolve from those who remain trapped inside frustration. As your discipline grows, something unexpected begins to happen. The same people who ignored your silence start paying attention to your results. The same voices that dismissed your potential become curious about your progress. They search for dramatic explanations because they cannot believe consistent effort could create such transformation. They imagine secret advantages, lucky opportunities, or hidden assistance because accepting the truth would require admitting they underestimated the quiet person who never needed attention to become powerful. Every obstacle they placed in your path was designed to stop your progress. drain your confidence, and convince you that giving up was the only logical choice. They believed enough pressure would eventually force you to surrender. They expected every closed door to weaken your determination, every criticism to damage your self-worth, and every disappointment to push you further away from your purpose. What they never understood was that hardship does not always destroy people. Sometimes it introduces them to a version of themselves they never knew existed. The very barriers meant to defeat you quietly became the training ground where your greatest strengths were developed. Comfort rarely demands growth. When everything comes easily, there is little reason to question old habits or improve existing abilities. Challenges, however, force adaptation. They expose weaknesses that success often hides. Every difficult moment becomes a mirror, revealing where patience is missing, where discipline is inconsistent, and where fear still controls important decisions. While others avoided discomfort whenever possible, you gradually realized that every challenge carried a lesson disguised as frustration. Instead of asking why life had become difficult, you began asking what the experience was trying to teach you. Every setback refined your perspective. Failure stopped feeling like proof that you were incapable and started becoming valuable information. You learned that mistakes are not permanent identities, but temporary instructions. Every unsuccessful attempt narrowed the distance between ignorance and understanding. Every wrong decision revealed a better one waiting to be discovered. Instead of becoming embarrassed by imperfections, you accepted them as part of the process of becoming stronger. Growth replaced perfection as your primary goal. People often assume confidence appears before achievement, but true confidence usually arrives afterward. It is built through surviving situations that once seemed impossible. Every time you overcame disappointment, your belief in yourself quietly expanded. Every time you solved a difficult problem without outside rescue, your independence increased. Confidence stopped depending on compliments because experience became your evidence. No one needed to tell you that you were capable anymore. You had already lived through enough challenges to know it for yourself. The traps others created unexpectedly improved your awareness. Betrayal taught you the value of choosing relationships carefully. Rejection taught you not to depend entirely on approval from others. Delays taught patience. Unexpected losses taught gratitude for what remained. Criticism forced you to evaluate yourself honestly instead of relying on comfortable assumptions. Even painful experiences carried hidden advantages that could only be recognized after enough time had passed. What once felt unfair eventually became part of the foundation, supporting your future success. Many people become trapped because they spend more time complaining about obstacles than learning from them. They focus on who created the problem instead of discovering how to overcome it. Their attention remains fixed on blame rather than progress. But blame cannot build skill. Complaints cannot replace preparation. Anger alone cannot create solutions. The moment you redirected your attention toward improvement instead of resentment, your entire path began changing. Every obstacle transformed from an enemy into a demanding instructor. Resilience is not built during peaceful seasons. It is developed when circumstances refuse to cooperate, when plans collapse, when opportunities disappear, when expectations fail. Resilience quietly begins forming beneath the surface. At first, it feels uncomfortable because uncertainty challenges everything familiar. But over time, repeated exposure to difficulty changes the way you respond. Problems that once felt overwhelming become manageable. Situations that once created panic become opportunities to practice calm thinking. You discover abilities that comfort never required you to develop. Every obstacle also strengthened your creativity. When traditional solutions failed, you searched for new approaches. When one opportunity disappeared, you created another. Instead of believing there was only one path forward, You became flexible enough to adapt. Adaptability is one of the most valuable qualities anyone can possess because life rarely follows perfect plans. Those who refuse to adjust eventually become trapped by changing circumstances. Those willing to learn continuously remain capable of moving forward regardless of external conditions. One overlooked benefit of adversity is clarity. Difficult moments reveal priorities with surprising precision. Distractions lose their importance. Superficial approval becomes less valuable. Temporary pleasures become easier to ignore when compared to meaningful long-term goals. Hardship strips away illusions, leaving behind only what genuinely matters. It forces honest conversations with yourself about the life you truly want to build and the sacrifices required to reach it. There were moments when progress seemed invisible. You questioned whether your effort was making any difference. The results arrived slowly, almost too quietly to notice. Yet, beneath the surface, every consistent action was creating momentum. Like a tree developing its roots before reaching toward the sky, your foundation was expanding long before visible success appeared. Others judged your present without understanding the invisible work taking place underneath. They mistook temporary stillness for permanent failure because they could not see the preparation happening beyond their view. Eventually, the obstacles that once appeared impossible became stories you could look back on with gratitude rather than resentment. They had tested your patience, sharpened your judgment, strengthened your discipline, and expanded your perspective. The very challenges intended to slow your journey had quietly prepared you for opportunities that someone with an easier path might never have been ready to handle. By surviving what was meant to stop you, you became someone capable of achieving what once seemed completely beyond your reach. They spent so much time preparing for the version of you they believed existed that they completely ignored the person you were becoming. Every prediction they made was based on your past, your struggles, your visible limitations, and the mistakes they had already witnessed. They assumed tomorrow would simply repeat yesterday. That assumption became their greatest weakness because transformation rarely announces itself. It happens quietly, one disciplined decision at a time, until the person standing before the world is no longer the same individual everyone thought they understood. While they watched your failures, they stopped paying attention to your growth. They laughed at temporary setbacks without noticing the lessons hidden inside them. Every difficult season strengthened your judgment. Every disappointment improved your emotional control. Every challenge sharpened your ability to adapt under pressure. They believed experience was breaking you apart when, in reality, it was rebuilding you into someone far more capable than before. They confused temporary struggle with permanent weakness, never realizing that pressure often creates strength instead of destroying it. The move they never predicted was not driven by anger or revenge. It was built through patience. Most people expect dramatic reactions because they understand emotion better than discipline. They assume that if someone has been underestimated, betrayed, or ignored, the response will be immediate and emotional. But emotional decisions often satisfy the moment while damaging the future. You chose something different. Instead of chasing quick victories, you quietly prepared for lasting ones. Every day you invested in yourself became another piece of a strategy that nobody else could see. Patience has a remarkable effect on perception. While everyone else rushes toward immediate rewards, the patient person begins noticing opportunities invisible to impatient minds. They recognize patterns others overlook. They understand timing instead of forcing outcomes. They know that some doors open only after consistent preparation has taken place. Rather than demanding instant recognition, they focus on becoming undeniable. Recognition eventually arrives as a consequence of excellence instead of the goal itself. Your greatest advantage came from refusing to reveal everything too soon. In a world where many people announce every plan before taking action, you allowed your work to remain private. This prevented unnecessary distractions and protected your focus. Opinions lost their power because there was nothing to defend. Criticism became irrelevant because your energy remained invested in improvement instead of explanation. Every hour spent working quietly widened the distance between your current ability and the outdated assumptions people continued believing. Many individuals underestimate the power of consistency because its results appear slowly. Small improvements seem insignificant from one day to the next, but over months and years, those tiny gains accumulate into remarkable transformation. While others searched for shortcuts, you embraced repetition. You understood that extraordinary outcomes are often created by ordinary habits, practiced with extraordinary commitment. Every disciplined morning, every difficult choice, every refusal to quit added another layer to the person you were becoming. The unexpected move was not a single dramatic action. It was the accumulation of thousands of invisible decisions made when no one was watching. It was choosing discipline over excuses, learning instead of complaining, improving instead of comparing, staying focused instead of becoming distracted by temporary setbacks. Those decisions appeared small in isolation, but together they created a completely different future. Success rarely arrives through one magical moment. It emerges from countless moments where the correct decision is repeated long after excitement has disappeared. People who rely on appearances often fail to recognize invisible preparation. They judge current circumstances instead of future potential. Because they cannot see your private effort, they assume no progress exists. This illusion gives disciplined individuals an enormous advantage. By the time visible results appear, the foundation has already become too strong to ignore. Observers describe the success as sudden only because they never witnessed the years of quiet preparation beneath the surface. There is another reason they fail to anticipate your rise. They expected you to continue seeking their approval. They assumed your confidence depended on their opinions, but once you stopped measuring your worth through the eyes of others, everything changed. Freedom replaced fear. Decisions became clearer because they were no longer controlled by the desire to impress people who had already decided to underestimate you. You realized that proving yourself to doubters is far less valuable than becoming the person your future requires. The moment eventually arrived when preparation met opportunity. Nothing looked dramatic from the outside, yet everything had changed internally. The skills you had developed, the discipline you had strengthened, the mindset you had refined, and the resilience you had earned all came together at exactly the right time. What others viewed as one unexpected move was actually the visible result of years spent building invisible strength. They searched for luck because they could not imagine consistent effort producing such a powerful outcome. They looked for hidden advantages because they overlooked the simplest explanation. The person they underestimated had quietly become someone they could no longer predict, control, or compete with. There comes a moment when people who built their confidence on control begin to realize that control is far more fragile than they imagined. For years they believed their influence was permanent because no one had seriously challenged it. They relied on money to open doors, power to silence opposition, and fear to keep others from questioning their authority. Every victory reinforced the illusion that they were untouchable. They became so comfortable standing at the top that they forgot one simple truth. Anything built on pride eventually begins to crack from within. The greatest downfall rarely begins with an outside attack. It begins when arrogance blinds people to the weaknesses growing inside their own foundation. They spent enormous energy protecting an image instead of strengthening their character. Every decision was made to preserve status rather than pursue wisdom. They surrounded themselves with people who agreed with them, praised them, and repeated what they wanted to hear. Honest feedback disappeared because everyone feared speaking uncomfortable truths. Without realizing it, they created an environment where growth became impossible. Success without humility slowly transformed into complacency. Complacency became overconfidence, and overconfidence eventually became the very reason their empire started losing its balance. While they focused on maintaining appearances, you focused on building substance. Every lesson you learned added another brick to your foundation. Every setback increased your resilience. Every sacrifice strengthened your discipline. You were not trying to impress anyone because you understood that lasting success depends on what cannot always be seen. Character, patience, emotional control, and consistent effort are invisible investments that produce visible results only after enough time has passed. Unlike material advantages, these qualities cannot be taken away by changing circumstances. Power often creates the illusion that rules no longer apply. People begin believing they are too experienced to make mistakes, too important to fail, or too intelligent to be challenged. That mindset becomes dangerous because it closes the door to learning. The moment someone believes they have nothing left to improve, they stop growing. Meanwhile, the world continues changing. New ideas emerge, new opportunities appear, and new challenges demand different solutions. Those who refuse to adapt slowly become prisoners of yesterday's success. Your strength developed in the opposite direction. Because you had experienced failure, you never stopped learning. Because you had faced rejection, you appreciated every opportunity. Because you understood uncertainty, you remained flexible whenever plans changed. Humility kept your mind open while pride quietly closed theirs. This difference seemed small at first, but over time it created an enormous gap. They became increasingly dependent on old methods, while you became increasingly capable of adapting to new realities. Many people imagine collapse as one dramatic event, but real decline usually happens through a series of unnoticed decisions. Small compromises replace discipline. Short-term comfort replaces long-term vision. Confidence slowly turns into arrogance. Listening is replaced by assumption. Preparation is replaced by routine. None of these choices appear dangerous in isolation, yet together they weaken even the strongest structures. By the time the consequences become visible, the damage has already spread through the entire foundation. The same pattern exists in personal growth. Every positive habit may seem insignificant on its own. Reading a few pages, practicing one skill, waking up a little earlier, choosing patience over anger, or remaining focused despite distractions may not produce immediate recognition. Yet these quiet decisions accumulate just as steadily as careless ones. Over months and years, they shape an entirely different future. One person slowly builds strength while another slowly loses it, even if both appear similar on the surface for a long time. The people who underestimated you were too distracted by external victories to notice internal decline. They believed their greatest advantage was the size of their resources. But resources are only effective when guided by wisdom. Without discipline, wealth becomes wasteful. Without humility, influence becomes abuse. Without vision, success becomes temporary. They possessed impressive tools but neglected the mindset required to sustain them. Eventually, their greatest strengths became weaknesses because they relied on them without continuing to grow. At the same time, your progress remained almost invisible. You were developing habits instead of headlines. You were earning trust instead of demanding attention. You were solving problems instead of creating excuses. Every quiet improvement strengthened your ability to handle responsibilities that once seemed impossible. You became someone capable of remaining calm when others panicked, focused when others became distracted, and determined when others surrendered. These qualities cannot be purchased, borrowed, or inherited. They are earned through consistent choices repeated over time. Eventually, reality exposed the difference between borrowed power and genuine strength. The systems they depended upon could no longer hide the cracks they had ignored. Their confidence faded because it had always depended on external conditions remaining favorable. Your confidence remained steady because it had been built through adversity, discipline, and continuous growth. What looked like an unstoppable empire from the outside slowly weakened under the weight of its own pride, while the quiet foundation you had spent years building continued rising, proving that lasting victory belongs not to those who possess the most, but to those who never stop becoming more than they were yesterday. By the time everyone finally noticed your success, they assumed it had happened overnight. They looked at the results and ignored the years that created them. They saw confidence, but never witnessed the moments of doubt you fought through alone. They admired your discipline without understanding how many times you had to choose consistency over comfort. They celebrated the destination while remaining completely unaware of the lonely road that led there. From the outside, your victory appeared sudden. From your perspective, it was the product of countless quiet decisions, repeated long before anyone believed in you. Nothing valuable was handed to you without effort. Every opportunity demanded preparation. Every achievement required sacrifice. There were days when progress seemed invisible, when your hard work produced no immediate reward, and when quitting appeared easier than continuing. Yet those difficult moments became the most important chapters of your journey because they forced you to decide who you wanted to become. Anyone can remain committed when life feels easy. True determination is revealed when the reward is still invisible, when the path is uncertain, and when no one is standing nearby to offer encouragement. There were moments when people questioned your direction. Some laughed because they could not understand your vision. Others doubted your ability because they judged your future by your current circumstances. Many believed your quiet persistence was wasted effort because they measured success only through immediate results. They failed to realize that meaningful growth often happens beneath the surface, hidden from public view. Just as the strongest foundations are built underground before a building rises into the sky, your greatest development took place where applause could not reach. Every sacrifice became an investment instead of a loss. While others chose temporary comfort, you chose long-term growth. While they searched for shortcuts, you accepted the slower path of mastering your skills. Every early morning, every late night, every disciplined decision added another layer to your future. Those choices were rarely exciting. Most of them appeared ordinary, even insignificant. Yet ordinary actions performed consistently over long periods create extraordinary outcomes. Success is rarely built through one remarkable effort. It is usually constructed through thousands of small victories that nobody notices until they accumulate into something impossible to ignore. The greatest transformation happened inside your mindset. Instead of fearing failure, you began treating it as feedback. Instead of waiting for perfect conditions, you learned to act with whatever resources were available. Instead of comparing your journey to someone else's, you focused on becoming better than you were yesterday. This shift changed everything because your progress no longer depended on external approval. Your motivation came from personal growth rather than public recognition. Once that happened, distractions lost much of their influence over your decisions. Discipline gradually replaced motivation as your greatest strength. Motivation arrives and disappears depending on emotion, but discipline continues regardless of mood. On difficult days, discipline carried you forward when excitement had already faded. It reminded you that temporary feelings should never determine permanent decisions. Every time you honored your commitment despite discomfort, your character became stronger. Those repeated choices quietly built trust in yourself. You discovered that self-confidence grows naturally when your actions consistently match your promises. People often believe victory belongs to the fastest, the loudest, or the most naturally gifted. Reality tells a different story. Lasting success usually belongs to those willing to continue after everyone else has stopped. Persistence creates opportunities that talent alone cannot sustain. Patience allows wisdom to develop where impulsiveness creates regret. Consistency multiplies ordinary effort until it produces extraordinary results. These principles appear simple, yet very few people practice them long enough to experience their full power. As your journey continued, challenges no longer appeared as enemies. They became opportunities to strengthen qualities that comfort could never develop. Difficult conversations improved your communication. Unexpected setbacks increased your resilience. Delayed rewards strengthened your patience. Criticism refined your perspective. Every experience added another layer to your emotional maturity. Instead of asking life to become easier, you gradually became stronger. That quiet transformation changed the way you approached every obstacle that followed. Eventually, the people who underestimated you were forced to reconsider everything they believed about your potential. They searched for hidden advantages because they could not accept that consistent effort had created such remarkable change. Some called it luck. Others claimed perfect timing. A few insisted outside help must have appeared at exactly the right moment. Very few understood the truth. Luck may open a door, but preparation determines whether someone can walk through it. Timing may create opportunity, but discipline determines whether it can be sustained. What they described as fortune was actually the visible reward for years of invisible commitment. When the moment of success finally arrived, it did not change who you were. It revealed who you had already become. Victory was never defined by applause, recognition, or proving your doubters wrong. It was defined by the person you built through every hardship, every sacrifice, every lesson, and every decision to continue moving forward, despite uncertainty. The greatest achievement was not standing above those who underestimated you. It was becoming someone who no longer needed their approval, because your life had become undeniable proof that genuine success is never given freely. It is earned through relentless perseverance, unwavering discipline, and the courage to keep building when no one else believes the foundation even exists.